2 people shot in the head, execution style. That looks like a hit to me.
A brutal killing.
The shocking part is that it was a family, newlyweds, starting out their life.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
She wasn't going to see him anymore because she was dating someone else.
They had an argument. He was mad, and he was going to kill him.
He had driven by the home. Is it a stalking situation?
He kind of ripped him off. And you don't do that to the Brotherhood.
The truth will be revealed.
He lived a very dark world, and he knew that he was going to be exposed.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Holland, Michigan. One of the Midwest's oldest and prettiest towns.
It's kind of originally a Dutch community that was formed many, many years ago.
It's a small community. It's very common for you to leave your doors unlocked, leave your keys in your car. Just a good place, nice place to live.
But a double homicide changes that in an instant.
When I first got to the scene, I was approached by the responding officer. He informed me that there was a female victim in the house and that there was another victim in the automobile outside of the house.
The couple are identified as Rick and Gail Brink.
The victim in the house was lying on her back in bed. She had 3 wounds in her head. The male victim had 2 bullet holes in the left side of his head.
The passenger front window was shot out, so there was at least 3 rounds that we knew of that were shot.
He was lying face down. His torso was over the console, and his head was face down on the passenger seat.
Detective Lauren Wasink is now responsible for finding the couple's killer.
Your on-the-spot reporter, reporting to you from Ransom Street. This is the new residence of Rick and Gail Brink.
It was a family, just a newlyweds, lived out in the country, starting out their life. They recently just bought this house with the help of Rick's father. And the house needed a lot of work, and between he and Gail, they done the work over a period of months to get it prepared to live in.
Now that we've got that on film, at least soundtrack.
They had a lot of friends, well-liked. Gail was always a very social person. Rick was in sales in his company, very respected, was doing very well.
Again.
The shocking part is the fact there was someone out there who was capable of killing this young family.
Rick on the ranch, signing off.
Bye.
The key to solving their murder will be in unpacking every detail of the last day of their lives.
Whenever you're doing any type of investigation, it's just kind of basic that you do get a timeline where your victims were prior to their homicide.
The first indication that particular morning, that there may have been a problem was when Rick didn't show up for work. His employer called a company where Gail worked, found out that Gail didn't come to work. Someone in the meantime got a hold of Rick's parents. Rick's mother decided that she'd like to go out there and check. So the bodies were discovered by Rick's parents. Based on the medical examiner, stomach contents gives us a pretty good idea that they were probably killed between Saturday night late and early Sunday morning.
Detectives examine the crime scene to determine the events leading up to the murder.
Rick was dressed in his dress slacks. I believe he had on suspenders, a belt, and a shirt. And then he had on his work galoshes that he appears to have kind of slid on.
It appeared as though Rick might have been drinking a beer, watching TV. At some point, something caused him to put his boots on and his coat on and to go out to the vehicle. But the ignition was off, the window was rolled 3/4 down. Cold weather, why is his window open? Was Rick on his way someplace? And did he then encounter someone? At that time, we didn't know. We checked for casings inside and outside of the house. None were found.
So either the suspect cleaned up the shell casings, or it was a revolver and they remained within the gun. After autopsies, it was confirmed that they were .22 caliber rounds.
Gail's dress was basically dropped along the floor next to the bed. So it would have appeared that she would have basically disrobed and then crawled right in bed.
The contents of Gail's purse were emptied out. Rick's wallet was lying there open. There was $400 and some in a drawer, so we don't feel robbery was an issue at all.
That, to me, says it was somebody who knew the victim.
From there on, it was from the inner circle and going out, talking to family members and seeing what they knew.
As police continue to work the scene, Gail's brother, Ryan Wingarden, arrives.
Ryan and his sister always seemed to have gotten along well. He was obviously somewhat distraught over what had happened. Ryan indicated that he was with his girlfriend, Pam, all weekend.
Ryan said they didn't see Rick and Gail, and they didn't find out that they were dead until Monday morning.
Ryan is, however, quick to tell detectives about a turbulent relationship from Gail's past.
Ryan told us about Gail's ex-boyfriend. Lars was quite a serious boyfriend. In fact, they lived together for a length of time and were planning on getting married. Well, that fell apart when Gail met Rick.
Ryan tells detectives when they parted ways, things turned violent.
Lars had packed up Gail's belongings, knowing she was going to come and pick him up. They got into a confrontation about what she was taking. And he slapped Gail.
Gail's brother Ryan went after him, and, he backed off right away.
Jealousy can be a very powerful, potent emotion that drives people to do irrational things and violent things.
Ryan then adds something that potentially puts Lars directly on the timeline of the murder.
Ryan had told us that he talked to Lars at a laundromat on Saturday evening before this killing. Lars asked how Gail was doing.
Lars said he was going to the bar. It's called Calypso's.
It's the same bar where Rick and Gail went. after attending a wedding earlier in the day.
So then you think, if they would have gone to Calypso's, they would have seen Gail's ex-boyfriend. Did he see Gail? Did it just kind of ignite all those feelings? Did something happen there?
If you're looking for some type of a motive, Lars would have had one.
Detectives have identified their first person of interest in the deaths of Rick and Gail Brink, Gail's ex-boyfriend, Lars.
Sometimes an obsession can start with a small kernel and grow. And it can grow to the point where people will commit murder.
We interviewed Lars. I asked him how he felt about Gail and about Rick. He said he would be happy if Rick and Gail split up because he still loved her.
At one point, he admitted that he had driven by the home just because, you know, he was really infatuated with her.
He indicated to me that he still had a wedding picture of Rick and Gail in his belongings.
Police shift their focus to his whereabouts on the night of the murder.
He admitted that he had gone with a friend to Calypso's, where the wedding party went after the reception. Lars said he actually recalled seeing some people come in from a wedding, but that he did not even know that Gail was at that wedding. Then he had actually, after that, gone home and was there for the night.
He said he might have got back at midnight.
Detectives must determine if Lars is telling the truth.
We started interviewing those people that were present at the wedding, trying to gain any information that we could get, whether there had been some difficulties between the two of them.
Gail was not a really big drinker, and I think she had had some champagne and got a little tipsy. When you start adding alcohol to any incident, sometimes, you know, either people are gonna be happy drunks or they're not gonna be. But there was no fight that broke out. And everybody said Rick was just kind of, you know, good old Rick. Come on, I'm gonna take my wife home.
In talking to persons with Rick and Gail, they thought they left between 10:30 and 11:30 at night.
And that was the last they were seen.
This lines up with Lars' version of events, but doesn't rule out the possibility he went to their house later that night.
We polygraphed him. Lars was more than willing to take a polygraph. He passed without any problem. Looking at the whole scope of it, the polygraph, his demeanor, his feelings towards Gail, I'm convinced he would have never hurt Gail, even though he slapped her. People can wrong you. You don't go kill them. I felt in my mind that Lars was not involved and we should go on to some other place. And by that time, there was tips coming in, many calls about the person who lived there prior to Rick and Gail Brink.
Sid Colby lived there with his girlfriend, and they were about to lose the home, so they sold it. He was a road knight, which is a biker gang that was in existence in the Holland area. If ever there was anything going on that was illegal, a lot of times Sid Colby was involved in it. People were concerned, could he have been involved because of the fact that Sid was not happy that he lost this home?
He was always on the edge, always dealing in drugs. He'd try to impress people that I'm armed, you don't mess with me, you don't mess with my girlfriend.
Sid Colby, he was crazy. I mean, he was nuts. He was a habitual liar, and he was paranoid.
A lot of the paranoia, I think, was because he took a lot of drugs.
So it was definitely something you had to look at. It carried a little different priority level than just random guy that lived there.
They managed to track a skittish Sid Colby down at his new place.
We determined that that night, Sid said he was at a local bar where he hung out frequently, and then he said he went home. But once it got after midnight, we weren't too sure where Sid was anymore.
There's a lot of steps or hoops that a trained investigator is going to go through when they receive information, let's say it from a criminal. Lack of credibility is going to be a problem for them.
So we had a polygraph done. Polygraph was that Sid was telling us the truth when he said he was not involved in the crime. There was just nothing there that we could come up with which would cause any type of a motive. As strange as what Sid was, he didn't have any guts at all. He's scared, he's paranoid, and I don't think Sid could do it.
When detectives press Sid for information, he puts forward an interesting theory.
He told the investigators about people that were after him and his girlfriend, and he felt that they were the intended victims of this shooting. They had very dangerous connections with a motorcycle group out of Detroit. He'd sell them narcotics, but he'd either short them or he wouldn't pay enough, and he'd get in trouble because of it.
He had actually been shot at, allegedly, out at the local motorcycle club's house.
But it was one event in particular that led Sid to believe he'd become a target.
At one point, Sid had agreed to fix a car for one of the group's girlfriends. And Sid and his girlfriend, Chico, decided they'd be better off selling the car. They used the money for themselves, and obviously got into a lot of hot water with this group out of Detroit.
If you're in a motorcycle gang, you don't do that to the Brotherhood.
He claims that after that, these people came to his house to get him prior to this killing, and he ran them off with an automatic rifle.
Sid believes this may have led the gang to hire a hitman.
He'd be told where to go, and that there'll be a guy and a gal at that house, and their job would be to take care of the guy and the gal. And Sid believed that this was what happened with Rick and Gail, and that it was meant for he and Chico.
2 people shot in the head, execution style. That looks like a hit to me.
Michigan detectives believe the Brink murders may be a result of mistaken identity. A gang hit meant for the former owner of the house.
In the drug world, if you don't pay your drug debt, this is what happens. But in a lot of cases, no one's going to talk because the code of the street of not cooperating or helping the police, therefore becoming a rat, is very strong.
Detectives must find a way to place the gang at the scene of the crime. They contact a narcotics unit with agents placed inside the organization.
The informant we had was set up through the Michigan State Police. They had persons in this motorcycle gang that should have been able to determine whether or not this motorcycle group was involved. 2 names came up. One was Ghetto Rat, the other was Grizz. Grizz, within a week of this homicide, was shot and killed in Detroit. Ghetto Rat was interviewed. He said, if our club killed him, he said, I'd have been there. And he said, it didn't happen. Obviously, this is just a statement from him, but he was very believable. The scenario of this motorcycle group out of Detroit coming there to kill Sid Colby and Chico made some sense. but there was nothing there. So now you're weeks into this thing with a lot of hope, and all of a sudden that's gone.
Without any new leads, the case begins to stall.
There isn't anybody else out there that we could come up with that had any motive or any reason to kill Rick and Gail Brink. With a motive, it's pretty difficult to solve the crime. I would go back to the family, telling them we don't have anything more, telling them that we're going to keep working on it, and each time going back and not having anything to give them, I think was the most difficult and frustrating part of it.
In 1995, Detective Wassing retires after 31 years on the force.
I didn't like leaving with open cases. Some of these cases can wear on you. This one probably weighed on me the greatest of all of them.
In 2011, 24 years after the murders, the investigation is assigned to cold case detectives Venus Repper and David Blakely.
You had to go back into the books, relearn everything that they did.
We always had a philosophy that the person who did it is in there. It was a matter of going through the detective notes and putting those in order, doing it chronological.
In cold case investigations, you will, from time to time, find the killer in the original box, we'll call it, of evidence. In this case, the violence portrayed at the crime scene would suggest it was someone known to the deceased. Access to the crime scene, no sign of forced entry.
During their review, something odd stands out to Detective Repper.
When we looked through the crime scene photos, one of the questions, there was a pillow that was placed over Gail's face. The pillow was actually a pillow that belonged in the living room. If it would have been put there beforehand, you would see some type of bullet holes. The pillow had blood residue, so it would have been placed there after Gail had been murdered. So we knew that it had to be the killer who put the pillow over her face.
Why is a pillow from the living room over the head of the victim in the bedroom?
That, to me, was more like somebody not wanting to look at him.
And that emotionally says, I don't want to see this. The kind of individual you're looking at knew Rick and Gail very well.
This prompts the cold case detectives to focus on Rick and Gail's families.
You must look at the family. You have to eliminate them. Certainly if there's insurance, valuables, assets involved, we have a recipe for potential disaster.
We first interviewed Bud, Rick's brother. One of the things we found out was that if something happened to Rick, Bud would be the one to inherit everything.
Wills can tear families apart. That could be a motive for someone to get very upset and perhaps commit murder.
Those were questions that we posed to him as far as whether he was responsible, whether he was involved in the homicide. Bud was college educated, he had a good job. He himself was a success on his own. He said he and his brother really had a good relationship. As far as his alibi, he was actually home with his wife. There was no animosity. There was nothing to indicate that there was any issue between Bud and Rick.
They turn their attention towards Gail's family.
Gail had a very challenging childhood. She came from a very large family. Her mother, I don't think she was capable of caring for as many children as what she had.
I think there was just some real dysfunction going on there, and so the kids were the ones that were responsible for taking care of themselves.
They talked to Cheryl Murphy, Gail's older sister.
They had a really good relationship. She basically helped raise Gail. She does not live in the state and doesn't maintain everyday contact with her family. Before Dave and I got the case, another detective asked her, write down some conversations you've had or some things pertaining to this. She had some concerns about her brother Ryan. Cheryl would say Ryan's controlling. He wants you to do what he says, and her and him did not get along. They butted heads. She said, he's my brother, but he's a control freak. There were some red flags that we were like, that's not right. Something's wrong there. So we found out as much information as we could about Ryan.
Cheryl tells detectives about a family dispute that had been brewing the week before the murder.
Ryan was renting a house, and her parents and the younger siblings were living in a trailer in Ryan's driveway. He had indicated that his landlord had gotten upset about it and wanted him out of there.
Cheryl says this prompted Ryan to call Gail the day before she was killed.
He told Gail, you got that house, let mom and dad come live with you. And she basically told him, no, I'm not gonna do it. Rick won't allow it. It's not gonna happen. She had actually told her, he's mad, he's furious.
That had never been learned by the original investigators.
I interviewed Cheryl Murphy several times, but she never told us that Gail had called her on the Friday night prior to the murder and told her what a violent confrontation she and Ryan had had.
Cheryl goes even further.
She said that when her father had told them that Gail and Rick were dead, Ryan got up and went right to Rick and Gail's house. She's like, how did he know they were at the house? He didn't ask or anything. All these years, Ryan had gone under the radar and not really been looked at. He needed to be looked at a lot more.
Cold case detectives investigating the murder of Rick and Gail Brink have focused their attention on Gail's brother Ryan.
We wanted to have it where when we interviewed Ryan, we knew about him. We kind of thought there was something there.
They learn Ryan is now married to the woman he was with the night the murders happened, Pam Wingarden.
As far as for Ryan's alibi back in '87, he had indicated that he and Pam had gone to a laundromat to do laundry, 5 to 8-ish. And then from there, they went over to Pam's girlfriend's house where they hung out there. And I believe Ryan then took Pam home around 2 in the morning.
Aiming to verify their version of events, detectives bring Ryan and Pam in for questioning.
We made that tactical decision to interview Pam first because we knew Ryan's a control freak. He thought he was going to be able to be interviewed with her. So we told him to come back, but he said, no, I'll wait here.
Detectives ask Pam about the story she told 25 years ago.
She said basically, I don't remember, I can't remember. And I'm just like, well, we're just asking you to be truthful.
Pam was very reluctant. One of the things that Venus did was gain trust. She built rapport.
She finally admitted that Ryan was not with her that night. So we knew something was up. But at that point, she's like, I'm gonna go home. And I asked her, are you gonna be okay? Because I was concerned if he's this controlling, and you just told us that you lied for your husband. I mean, we gave her every opportunity. Well, she left. We knew Pam knew more than what she was saying, but wasn't really willing to share yet. We didn't feel she was responsible for it, but we weren't able to make an arrest. So we then brought Ryan in. And he didn't care for women. So actually, Dave took the lead on this interview.
His body language was total deception.
We told him, your wife said you weren't with her. Well, she's confused. No, she's confused. This is what we did.
He didn't want us to talk to Pam. He didn't want us to do a complete investigation.
He denied any involvement in his sister and brother-in-law's homicide.
If your brother or your sister was murdered and you had nothing to do with it, you would do everything you could to help. Here you have a blood brother not helping.
Pretty much after that, Ryan left.
With differing accounts from Pam and Ryan, detectives must find a way to verify his whereabouts the night his sister was murdered.
Back in 1987, Ryan was not only dating Pam, but he was dating another girl named Chris. So we then went and interviewed her. Talked to her about her relationship with Ryan and things that had happened. She said, Ryan wanted kids, I couldn't give him kids.
And so that was the demise of their relationship.
We kind of went through the interview. We were there for maybe an hour. And then we're kind of like, okay, anything else? No. And literally, we're like getting up out of our chairs, and she's like, well, there is this one thing. And we look at each other and we sit back down and we're like, well, what is it? And she proceeds to tell us about how Ryan came over and told her his sister had been murdered. And it was 2 days after they were found, and asked, can you go with me for a ride? And she's like, then he drove me around. We went to the park. And she goes, he sat there and he was crying and he was talking about what a terrible person he was. And she's like, you know, I was afraid he was gonna tell me he killed her. And we said, what did he tell you? And at that point she said that he had said he had a sexual relationship with her, that he basically had raped his sister. That it happened more than once, and that she wasn't willing.
That was huge. That was the aha moment. If Gail had told Rick about the abuse, Ryan was going to be exposed. The question at that time was, is the aha moment going to turn into a confession?
Detectives Repper and Blakely bring Ryan in for a second interview.
Dave started talking to him about his relationship with Gail.
I was repeatedly asking him to tell me about that. What happened there? And he would respond with, what are you getting at, Dave? It was a pretty intense time.
We sat there, it was like 40 seconds, just staring. It was a stare down. And finally, Ryan admitted at that point that he had a sexual relationship with his sister. And he said it was just kids play, kids play. We kind of threw out there, well, you told Chris that, you know, it was basically like rape. He again downplayed the abuse. It was experimentation. No one was hurt, it only happened a little bit, and that was it.
Despite this admission, Ryan remains steadfast in denying his involvement in the murders.
So we still didn't have enough, but we at least had now a different path that we were going.
Detectives must prove beyond doubt that Ryan pulled the trigger 25 years ago.
We basically interviewed people all around him. interviewed his friends. We found Jim Meacham. Jim is a good friend of Ryan's. They hung out, they'd known each other for years. They kind of ran in the same circle. We interviewed him, and he recalled how he found out that Gail had been murdered. Jim, he would go to Ryan's house in the morning and he would have coffee with Ryan before he'd go to work sometimes. And he said it would be really, really early. He had gone there the day the bodies were discovered. And Ryan was up and Pam was up, and he's like, they're both crying, tears and everything. And he's like, what's wrong? And he said that Ryan had said, my sister's been murdered. The importance of that is Rick and Gail were not found murdered until 11 o'clock in the morning on that Monday. So the only way he could tell Jim Meacham that they were dead that early is if he was involved in the homicide.
After 25 years of investigation, detectives have found a flaw in Ryan Wingarden's timeline that convinces them of his guilt.
So you've got motive and you've got opportunity. You've got them both in spades, but you're going to need more than that to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person committed this murder.
Armed with their new information, detectives decide to re-interview his wife, Pam.
Along with the fact that she had lied to police about his alibi, we knew that she was hiding information. That's a lot of pressure on an individual.
But we said, you know what? She is a victim too. She's basically married this man after he may have done this horrible thing, and you have to get her to feel comfortable to come out with this information and share it. So at that point, Dave and I then made the decision to go to Pam's work. We just basically said, you know, we'd like to talk to you. And she said, yeah, I'll listen. We said, we are giving you the opportunity to come forward and tell us your story. The truth is gonna come out. You need to do what's right for your kids.
And we said, Pam, you need to come clean on this deal. Which she did.
She basically came out and admitted that Ryan had come over that night, was all upset, and had said, I killed Rick and Gail.
Pam's confession, along with the reconstructed timeline, lays out the final hours of Rick and Gail Brink and how a secret between siblings was the spark for their murder.
On Saturday, they went to the wedding. A bunch of people went to the bar after the wedding, and they were at the bar till probably around 11-ish. They would have been home no later than 11:30. Rick and Gail were up watching TV.
Ryan came over. There was a confrontation.
I think Ryan knew that Rick knew about the abusive relationship that he had with his sister. And I think Ryan was jealous of the life that Gail was starting to get for herself.
Gail told Ryan to get out and not to come back.
Gail turned around, walked down the hall, went to bed. And at that point, Rick looked at him and said, you really need to go. So Ryan then left the home. Ryan came back to the door saying he had car trouble. And then Rick had slipped on his galoshes. He still had on his wedding attire, put his old work coat on, went, got in the truck in the driver's side. And that's where Ryan shot him with a .22 in the head. He then went in the house, walked back to the bedroom. Where he then shot Gail in the head 3 times. Ryan then went back over to Pam's house. He then takes Pam back to Rick and Gail's home where he killed him. He then takes her back to the bedroom where he shows her Gail, and he actually is the one that puts the pillow on her head. And he indicates to her, if you tell anybody, this will happen to you. They then go back to Ryan's home. Ryan does take clothing items in the gun in a bag, and he discards them somewhere. You know, years went on, they had this secret. They just buried it.
Detectives have enough to arrest Ryan Wingarden.
I read him his rights, and I asked him no questions. But it was the look on Ryan's face.
He adamantly said that we badgered Pam, that she's only saying that because she wants a divorce, and, you know, and how dare she, just anything but accept responsibility for it.
His mode was jealousy, and that he was going to be exposed about his sexual abuse with his sister.
On March 28, 2014, 26 years after the murder of Gail and Rick Brink, a jury finds Wingarden guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. He is appealing his conviction.
When I look at Ryan, what do I see? I just see darkness. I felt like we had pulled a piece of darkness out of the world.
Dave and Venus, the cold case team, they worked their hearts out. I was thankful that they got to the bottom of it.
We brought the right person to justice, but it's always there, and I think it's sad for both families. The Wingarden family, you know, they lost their daughter by the hands of their own son. The Brinks, they lost their son, and they lost a daughter-in-law. It's just something their family will always have to deal with.
This was definitely a frenzy. Essentially, the person went berserk.
A vicious slaying.
People were terrified. People need a reason that bad things happen.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
They were sisters, but there was no sisterly love.
I'm just thinking, what do I do if he freaks out?
There was a lot of hate. There was a lot of discontent within that family circle.
The truth will be revealed.
What stood out to me as this crime scene is there was no rhyme or reason. It just didn't make sense. If Heath did this, he needs to pay for it.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. On the banks of the St. Joseph River sits Niles, Michigan, a community brimming with civic pride.
So Niles it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. It's the kind of community where you could meet a stranger and you both know the same person. And fortunately, we don't have a lot of violent crime here.
If crime happens, people are more than willing to help you. People respect police. Yes or no, sir. Here, people get involved.
But on one cold February afternoon, something so shocking happens, no one knows what to do.
Yes, County.
This is a 911 transfer. The gentleman is saying there's been a shooting.
Okay, where's the suspect at?
There's no suspect. Their door was open. We were trying to find them all morning. They were supposed to be at work, and I walked in the house, and they've been shot.
We received a 911 call from a father who says that his son and his daughter-in-law are deceased. He thinks it's a homicide.
Okay, sir?
Yes.
Have you been inside the house?
I have.
Okay. Are they injured or are they deceased?
They're deceased. Oh, my God.
I immediately called one of the troopers on a cell phone, and he said, "You need to get over here."
The victims are Carolyn and John Tarwaki, two beloved musicians who live with their nephew, Keelin.
John and Carolyn met late in life. They met online. They were just in a great place in their life because they had found each other, they were happily married.
Carolyn was a good soul, as I put it. She used to pick up old music instruments, and she would repair them and try to help kids who couldn't afford an instrument. And John was a Navy veteran. Hard workers, both of them.
Tasked with investigating their deaths are detectives Fabian Suarez of the Michigan State Police and local detective Kristen Daly, who has lived in this community for 20 years.
When we arrived there, that's when the light bulb went off for me that, oh, these are people that I know. My sister-in-law was very good friends with Carolyn in high school. So there was an immediate connection there, and I felt a lot more responsibility.
Detectives begin analyzing the crime scene, trying to imagine what might have taken place.
We walk into the foyer area of the house. Obviously, we take a quick moment, we stand, we scan. I can see John Tarwaki. He's got stab wounds on his back. We walk over to the right, there's a living room. We look in there and we see Keelin. We look to the left, there's a bathroom there. One of the first things I notice is there's a towel on the floor with hair clippings, and there's a razor on the sink. So to me, it tells me he was shaving his head. My gut feeling is the killer was confronted by John. He takes the first shot, he hits John right in the jaw. He shoots again, John throws up his arm, and then he turns and he's trying to escape, and he collapses right there. So now John is out of the picture. Now the killer can focus his attention on Carolyn.
At the time that you first looked at her, it was almost hard to tell exactly what had happened to her. She had been badly beaten. Being beaten is usually very immediate. It usually dictates that that's somebody that you know really well and you're really, really angry at when you see that level of injury and that level of violence visited upon somebody. And later it was determined that she was both stabbed and shot. And that's an extreme level of violence against the nicest person that you literally would ever meet. It made absolutely no sense.
To find out who ruthlessly killed this loving couple, police must reconstruct the final 24 hours of the Tarwakis' lives.
A timeline's important in every homicide case. You have to know where all your players are in any given moment to create an alibi or to break an alibi, to set your timeline so you can discover when was their vulnerability, when did the murder occur.
Investigators start building John and Carolyn's timeline by interviewing the person who found them, John's father.
When I first met John Tarwaki, Sr., obviously he was very distraught. How else could you be? You just walked in, you find your son and your daughter-in-law murdered. He said John and Carolyn had an 8 a.m. meeting at the high school. They never showed up. This is not like Carolyn. She will not miss work. She will not miss appointments, anything like that. So the school called Quinlan and Babbage, which is where they worked, and said, Carolyn never showed up. What happened?
John's sister worked for the company too, so they called John's father, like, can you go check and see what's going on?
He, in turn, said he tried calling the house, he tried calling the cell phones, and nothing happened, so he decided to get in the car and go knock on the door.
Hoping to flush out the Tarwaki's timeline further, detectives reach out to Carolyn's mother, Sharon.
Sharon tells me that she talked with Carolyn on the phone that morning. She was having some issues with her computer, so she was just venting some frustration to her mom. Just a normal touch and base with your mom in the morning. Sharon said there was nothing about that phone call that made her suspicious.
Detectives pull Sharon's cell phone records and verify that the call started at 6:10 a.m. and lasted exactly 12 minutes.
The last time she talks to her mother is at 6:22, says goodbye, not realizing either one that it's the last time.
But what happened after she hung up with her mother is still a mystery. Knowing that Carolyn was on her computer that morning gives them something to work with. Investigators dig into her laptop logs.
Carolyn logged onto the computer at 6:43 a.m. and then 7:03, the computer goes dormant, meaning that there's no longer any interaction with the keyboard.
Every time you hit a key on any device, there is a record of that. And when we see habitual use and ongoing keystrokes and then a sudden stoppage, that stoppage point serves as a great start for what happened next. Were they interrupted? Were they pulled away from the computer, or were they actually murdered at that particular time?
Based on when the computer goes dormant, Carolyn and John could have been killed any time between 7:03 a.m. and just before their bodies were found at 12:45 p.m. The bodies are sent off for autopsy, and the forensics team starts scouring the house for potential murder weapons.
We're looking for a knife, and we're looking for a gun at that point.
We don't know if he used one of the kitchen knives. So we took all the knives that looked like they could have been used for the murders, and we sent those to the medical examiner.
As they continue to work their way through the crime scene, investigators struggle to come up with a rational theory for the murders.
What stood out to me as this crime scene is there was no rhyme or reason. There was no sign of any forced entry whatsoever. There were valuables laying around. You could think it was a breaking and entering. Someone had gone in to steal things, but there was computers, there were laptops, iPads, cash money laying around. There was even prescription drugs in the medicine cabinets.
It's not until they make their way to the back of the house that the first clue into the identity of the killer reveals itself.
From where we're standing, I can hear a dog going crazy, and it turns out this is Wrigley, a 200-pound mastiff.
The Tarwakis had a large dog. It was ginormous, and it was on the back porch area. And so in their kitchen, you turned and you could either go down the basement or you can go out into a back porch.
Once we get to the back door, that's when we see footprints. One set of footprints coming in, one set of footprints coming out.
The footprints showed that somebody had entered and exited through the back door, which was unusual because they would have had to get past that dog. And that dog was incredibly protective of Carolyn. So normally if you are a stranger and you open someone's back porch door and you are greeted by a large mastiff, you turn around and walk away. You don't continue to enter the home. And if it's a stranger, why is the level of violence on Keelin so great? That told us that it was somebody that they knew.
Now, they're hoping this path will lead them to the killer's doorstep.
You have to work fast, you gotta work furiously, because if he did it once and he did it twice, he can definitely do it again.
Investigators believe that the rage-fueled homicide of Keelin and John Tarwaki was an intentional act, committed by someone who knew them.
A crime like this could be really devastating for a small community. The word would get out, and it would likely take over the town within a few hours. There would be a sense of, we're all in danger, who's next?
The only piece of hard evidence investigators have from the crime scene is a trail of footprints at the back of the house.
Well, we're pretty sure there's one killer. There's only one set of footprints.
The stride on the way in was short, like a normal walking stride, and the stride on the way out was wider, like a running stride. It tells us that, when he approached the house, he was calm, and when he left the house, he was agitated and fleeing because he had just committed the murders.
Once we get photographs, they are able to get us a good shoe size and a very good tread pattern.
We could actually look at the picture and see 12 in the shoe impression, so we knew it was a size 12 shoe. We were able to confirm that it was a Route 66 shoe that was put out by Kmart, but discontinued in 2008.
So this tells me this person's wearing old shoes that were cheap, basically. It's not a person that has a lot of money, that's spending a lot of money.
Using the footprints, detectives follow the killer's path.
There's an easement. Nobody really knows, unless you're from that area, you're not gonna know that easement there. It's kind of like a power line easement. So those footprints, we were able to follow them away from the house towards what's Yankee Street. So we do a neighborhood canvas. It's just as it's called. We go to every door within a mile, north, west, south, east, every direction. We knock on the doors.
In terms of canvassing, I have said for years that canvassing is the most important and yet simultaneously overlooked area of any investigation. This is the nitty-gritty, this is the unglamorous area of police work that solves cases. You need to find out who was home at the time of the murder, as close to the murder as possible.
One of the apartment's investigators' canvas belongs to Sherry Lince. When they knock on her door, they find her son Keith there as well.
Keith is known to us. He's had many, many problems with law enforcement. We know the Lince family. They're just a lot of family members have been, unfortunately, been on the wrong side of the law.
Detective Suarez consults local detective daily on whether or not she thinks Keith could be a person of interest.
I'd heard the name. I knew that he was in trouble and had been in trouble and had a criminal history, but I wasn't familiar with him like being connected to the Tarwakis at all.
Investigators question Keith about whether he knew the Tarwakis and his whereabouts that morning when they were killed.
Keith Lince says he may have walked past the residence and may have waved at John Tarwaki, but he says no, he doesn't know him. And Sherry Lince, she's able to confirm to us that Keith was at the home at 8 a.m. She said she woke up to go to work and Keith was asleep on the couch. She also is able to alibi him, saying that she actually took Keith to work on the morning of the homicide.
Satisfied with the Lince's accounting of their whereabouts, police move on. And it pays off almost right away.
Later on that morning, we found a neighbor who said, yep, I was outside smoking a cigarette, starting my car up. And that's when I see a young man running down the alleyway. She is positive that was, I believe, at 7:45 a.m. Those footprints were right by her house, maybe 30 feet from her deck. She told us, she goes, you never see anybody going through there at this time of the morning. Nobody ever sees there, and that's what caught her attention.
This new information is critical. Assuming the running man is the killer, investigators are now able to pinpoint when the Tarwakis were murdered.
So as best we could figure, it happened sometime from the time when Carolyn's computer goes dormant to 7:45. So it's almost like a 40-minute window that this murder could have occurred in.
It's an unusual time of day for a double homicide to take place.
It was very brazen. Nobody come and say homicide when everybody is getting ready to go to work. You're taking the chance of being seen. There's too many eyes out. Too many people are awake. Most homicides are going to involve at the time of darkness when not many people are around or you cannot be seen.
The eyewitness didn't get a good look at the man's face, but she says he was tall.
She said that she saw a white male, right around 6 feet tall, hard to pin down his age, between 20 and 30 years old, she thought, wearing a dark, whether it was a jacket or a hoodie, but he had a hood up, and he was running past her house out towards the main road.
The description immediately rings a bell for Detective Daly. It sounds like it could be Keelin, Carolyn and John's teenage nephew, who has been living with them.
I was familiar with Keelin because his younger brother had been on the same T-ball team with my son. So at that point, Fabian's like, oh, well, you can be the one to go talk to him at the school then.
Keelin is the son of Carolyn's sister, Katie, and her husband, David.
Keelin is kind of a combative individual. One of the reasons he was living with John and Carolyn was because he didn't get along with David, and they had fought quite a bit. The fights consisted of a lot of yelling and screaming. So I'm just thinking, you know, what do I do if he freaks out? What do I do if he's actually the suspect and he knows, like, immediately why I'm there?
We know that Keelin lives at the house. He automatically becomes our first suspect because he was probably the last people that saw John and Carolyn alive. So I asked Kristen Daly to conduct the interview because I wanted that female perspective to talk to him, probably get more information. We have to determine as quickly as possible, is he involved? Did he commit the crime? Does he know who committed the crime?
When I got to the school and they brought him out of his classroom, he looked confused. He knew who I was, but he couldn't really figure out why I was there. Keelin's sitting there and he's looking at us. I could just see the conflicting play of emotion on his face. And then Fabian tells him exactly why we were there. He said, John and Carolyn are dead, and we need to talk to you. And Keelin completely melted down. He just completely had a breakdown right there. I said, I need you to go through your morning. I need you to tell me exactly what you did. I need you to tell me exactly, as best you can remember, what time things happened. He told me that his Aunt Carolyn woke him up in the morning, shortly after 6. He leaves the house about 6:30 in the morning, and his grandmother lives 2 doors down from John and Carolyn. So at 6:35, he goes to his grandmother's, talks to her really quick. He grabs some pop and some beef jerky. He's there for maybe not even 10 minutes, if that long, because he catches the bus then at 6:45.
Detective Daly checks Keelin's alibi with his grandmother, Sharon.
Sharon says she gets off the phone with Carolyn at 6:22. Keelin shows up within 5-10 minutes of that phone conversation to Sharon's home. Keelin is calm, he is clean, so he wouldn't have had time to commit those murders, and he would have been a mess physically.
We follow up with the school with the times the bus is there, cameras in the school. We know he walked into the school. We talk to the teachers. We know he walked into the classroom.
He had a backpack, and there was an empty pop bottle like in the outside of his backpack, and also a bag of jerky. So that corroborated his story. Also, there was not a good motive for Keelin. He was in a really good place. John and Carolyn lost their lives, but Keelin lost his future.
With Keelin's whereabouts verified from 6:22 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., detectives conclude he couldn't have killed the Tarwakis. According to Keelin, he hated living with his mother and stepfather and wanted to stay with Carolyn and John permanently.
Once Keelin moved out of the home, his grades picked up and he really liked it. Obviously, there was no domestic problems. There was no fighting, anything like that in the house. He really liked living there.
Detectives then discover that the Tarwakis had filed for legal guardianship, so Keelin wouldn't have to return to his parents' home. In fact, the attorney had served the papers to Keelin's mother, Katie, just 2 days before the murders took place.
I knew Katie, so I was already familiar with her temperament. She doesn't care what you think about her, and she will tell you exactly what's on her mind. She can come across as very aggressive, very combative, and Katie did not want Carolyn to have guardianship, and she was angry. And knowing Katie's personality and knowing that she could be pretty aggressive, and just seeing the level of violence visited on Carolyn, your mind goes to that first person who's angry. And that circled back to Katie.
The investigation into the brutal double homicide of Carolyn and John Tarwaki is zeroing in on Carolyn's sister, Katie.
When we interview Katie, basically what she tells us, growing up, Carolyn was treated better than she was. They were sisters, but there was no sisterly love. Katie despised Carolyn. She tells us, hey, I didn't kill my sister, but I'm not going to miss her. She told me, I've always believed that Carolyn was trying to take my son because she didn't have kids of her own. And she really believed this, so obviously this raises a flag.
It almost seemed like she didn't care. A normal person, you tell them that their brother or sister has died. It doesn't matter if they fought 20 minutes ago, they're devastated. This is their sibling, this is somebody they love. And she didn't act like your normal sibling to a victim of a horrendous crime. She's a little detached.
When people don't react as expected in a police interview, it immediately throws up a red flag. Why are they acting this way? Are they potentially involved in this crime? Do they dislike, a person enough to commit an act of violence? And in this case, you're wondering, could this sister have engaged in something violent towards this couple?
But some things just don't add up with this theory. The eyewitness said she saw a man between 20 and 30 years old fleeing the scene, not a middle-aged woman. And she said this happened at 7:45 a.m.
Katie actually lived pretty much next door to me. She is a bus driver for this same school district, and she drove the bus past my house every morning. So we were able to confirm with the bus garage that yes, Katie showed up to work, she came on time, and she was driving her bus. And there just wasn't time during a bus route for her to stop at the house and commit this murder.
Detectives consider a different theory.
I know that she didn't commit the homicide, but maybe the husband decided to do it. Through police reports, we know that David drank. We believe he had a drinking problem. And we know that there's a lot of, domestic violence in that home. There was a lot of hate. There was a lot of discontent within that family circle. So if you want to keep your wife happy, you want to keep your family happy, you're going to want to do something to help her.
David was quiet to Katie's, more bombastic, volatile personality, but nobody had any doubt that if she'd asked him to do this, that he would have done that for her.
With David now in their crosshairs, detectives put the timeline to the test to determine where he was when the Tarwakis were killed.
I believe from the timeline that we built up, we know that the morning of the homicides, David had to take the kids to the babysitters. He says he was there at 7:30 a.m. dropping the kids off. We go to the babysitter, and we were able to substantiate his whereabouts. He works in South Bend, so it takes him almost 20 minutes to get to work. He started work at 8 a.m. We follow up on his work. We know that at that work, they actually have palm scanners to get into the building. We know that he put his palm there, that he scanned his palm, and we know that he was at work. So there was no way that he would have been the killer, that he was involved.
Having eliminated from the suspect pool all three of the people closest to the Tarwakis, detectives are stumped.
There were so many things about this case that didn't flow up from a normal investigative standpoint. We were still really focused at that point on this is somebody that they knew, somebody that was angry with them. And we had talked to everybody that we knew that knew John and Keelin. We talked to John's, ex-wives. We dug deep into his past trying to find a motive, and just nothing was panning out. Everything was coming up a dead end.
Investigators are forced to consider whether the murders may have been more random than they first appeared.
People were terrified. People need a reason that bad things happen. When there's no reason that something bad has happened, then everybody thinks, then that could be me. And that freaks people out, obviously. We all like to believe that if we just do the right thing at the right time, then we're all safe, but that's not clearly how the world works.
Weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. And eventually, the case goes cold.
That was the first time that I ever had trouble sleeping after a case. It was awful. It was awful because it was unsolved and just no idea at that point. And the other thing that haunts you is, did you miss something?
As it turns out, they did.
I received a call from the mother, Sharon McKnight, who is cleaning out the house to sell. She is cleaning out the refrigerator, thawing out the freezer, and as she's removing items, she says she found a bloody knife. I was actually here at work. I immediately respond to the location along with one of my troopers. Sure enough, there's a bloody knife in the freezer.
Investigators have just discovered that they missed a key piece of evidence while processing the murder scene of Keelin and John Tarwaki, a bloody knife.
The sickness feeling that goes over you is like, wow, how did we miss that? We missed it. So, I'm the lead investigator. I have to take responsibility for everything that goes wrong. So, yeah, it's my responsibility to make sure everything was done. It wasn't done properly. The knife is processed. DNA shows that it is Keelin and it is John's blood on the knife. But unfortunately, there is no third party. We were hoping maybe to find DNA from our suspect that could be identified, but there was not.
Just when things couldn't seem more hopeless, Detective Suarez receives a call that breathes new life into the investigation.
Patricia Wiles, with a local young lady, she had a run-in with the local police officer. She was stopped. She was arrested, I believe, for driving while her license suspended. When they brought her in and they booked her, she told them, I'd like to talk to the detective who's in charge of the Tarwaki homicide because I think I have information as to who killed him. This officer obviously calls me right away at home. I believe it was 3 in the morning or something like that. So I obviously come to work right away. I start interviewing Patricia Wiles, and she brings up the name of Keith Lince. Keith Lince, who we had talked to initially, but was not on the radar.
26-year-old Keith Lince was someone they interviewed on the very first day of the investigation. His mother, Sherry, told them Keith was at home with her at the time of the murder. And back then, they had no reason to doubt her.
Patricia tells us that she was living with Keith Lince's brother or half-brother. And on the night of the homicide, she came to the trailer, and she said Keith was just bouncing all over the place. And kept looking out the window, and she asked him, "What are you doing?" She said, "The cops are after me." And, "Well, why are the cops after you?" And she said, "Because I left my effing footprints in the yard, and they're gonna find me."
Patricia tells them that Keith was heavily into crystal meth, and that night, she was afraid of him.
So when you take crystal meth, what it can do is it can cause agitation, it can cause people to experience suspicious thoughts, paranoia, and sometimes people even start to see or hear things that aren't there. And all of this combined can make social interactions to be very unpredictable with these people. They become very emotionally disinhibited, emotionally dysregulated, and sometimes engage in erratic behavior and, in some cases, explosive violence.
One of Patricia Wild's big alarming concerns was just the way Keith was acting. He was acting berserk, and she said he had a gun in one hand, was waving it around, but she also observed him with a couple other weapons in his belt line.
That's started the ball rolling with Keith Lince, and we really started to dig in on him as our main suspect.
To confirm Patricia's story, Detective Suarez tracks down Keith's baby mama. She's in bad shape.
It turns out that within a month or so, I believe, of the homicides, Keith had choked her, beat her, choked her, and we were able to confirm this through South Bend Police Department records, that we obviously now know he's got the propensity for violence. Now that we really got our teeth sunk into Keith Lince, we start looking for his inner circle. We start getting more calls. The next big break really comes from another ex-girlfriend. She had a birthday party for one of her sons, and the mother told her, "Why do you have Keith Lince here? He killed the Tarwakis. Get him out of my home. I don't want him in my house." So that started a fight. She said she asked him, "Why do people think you killed the Tarwakis?" And he told her, "Well, because they found my footprints there, but I was just taking a shortcut to my grandparents' house."
It seemed believable. If you're gonna make a story up, why do you make the footprints in the snow up? Because we never had released that and people didn't know we had that as evidence.
Detectives now strongly believe Keith murdered Carolyn and John Tarwaki, but they need proof. They go back to Sherry Lince, hoping to break his alibi. She reiterates that Keith was sleeping on the couch at 8 a.m. and that she drove him to work at 9.
So now we're working on it. We have to confirm his timeline. And at that time, he was working at Walmart in Mishawaka, Indiana. We were able to determine through work records that was not true. He never did show up for work. He didn't call in sick. He didn't call in at all. So we know that he's not there. We believe Mom's lying.
If only detectives had checked Keith's alibi back on day 1 of the investigation, they would have realized that he had both the means and the opportunity to kill the Tarwakis.
It's not uncommon to see in a lot of cases that go cold, in this case 3 years. And it doesn't matter if it's 3 months, 3 years, 30 years. I'll often tell investigators, the name of the offender is probably already in the file. He's probably already even been interviewed and falsely or wrongly screened out or excluded. And I say, always go back to what you did first and re-examine it with fresh eyes. And we see in this case, sure enough, he's spoken to in the canvas and not asked the right questions and ruled out.
Obviously, Keith is on the radar now. We tried looking for his whereabouts. We find out that Keith has fled to Nashville, Tennessee. The next day, I had to go to the doctor. My blood pressure was 200/195. We have to track him down. If Keith did this, he needs to pay for it.
Investigators believe Keith Lince killed Carolyn and John Tarwaki. After an exhaustive search, they finally track him down in a Nashville jail, imprisoned on some minor traffic charges.
So Keith and I have history. He doesn't like me, I don't like him. There comes a point in time where you really have to suck up your ego as an investigator. As much as I want to go interview Keith, I know that if I go, he's not going to say a thing. So I sent a couple other detectives to talk to him. They do lengthy interviews with him. He denies being involved. But he also thinks that he can beat a polygraph, and he volunteers to take polygraphs. He failed both tests miserably. So we know that Keith is our main suspect, but we don't have that final nail in the coffin.
But then, they get a phone call from a man by the name of Shane Zimmerman. He says he's got information about the homicide.
Shane Zimmerman is hitting the lotto, hitting all 7 numbers in the Powerball. It's just something that you don't expect out of the blue to come, even though we are on the right trail.
Shane Zimmerman describes himself as a childhood friend of the prime suspect, Keith Lince, who just happens to be sharing a cell with him at this very moment.
Shane says, Keith told me he did it. He can't take it back, but he says he did it, and he was crying one night. He's in his bunk crying. And Shane says, what's wrong? He says, I killed him. I killed those people. He goes, they didn't deserve to die, but I can't take it back.
In order to secure a conviction, investigators need Keith's confession on tape.
Shane Zimmerman didn't want anything. He said, I've screwed up my entire life. He goes, for once in my life, I'm going to do something right.
Shane agrees to wear a wire and heads back into the cell.
But we told him, don't ask questions, you don't interrogate, you don't interview. You just act as a listening post. If he wants to talk about it, you talk, you listen.
On their end, police push Keith in a series of interviews, keeping the murders at the top of his mind.
They said, hey, Keith, we know sometimes you can go into drug-induced hysteria, and this is what happened in this case, isn't it? And, you know, obviously he denied it there, but when he went back into the cell and was talking to Shane, he told Shane, he goes, man, they had it right on. That's what happened.
Finally, Keith breaks down and spills the whole story of the murder to Shane.
Zimmerman was a hammer that we hammered that nail home, so it was incredible stroke of luck.
With their informant's help, investigators are able to piece together John and Carolyn's final 24 hours.
We find out that Keith and his brother, Brian, are drinking all night long. They're doing drugs the entire night. That morning of the murders, Keith gets in a fight with the mother because he wants more money to go buy drugs. And this is very early in the morning prior to the homicides. We believe that after the mother would not give Keith money, he probably planned on doing a home invasion.
John is in getting ready for work. He is shaving. Carolyn's on her computer at 7:03. And sometime between there and 7:45, Keith Lince is walking down the road and walks down that back alley.
He may have seen this house that looked like an easy target. Knowing the area, he walks around to the back. He then goes in the house. Keith used to have pit bulls. This guy was not scared of dogs. He lets Wrigley, the dog, into the back room and closes the door behind him. I don't think he was expecting for John and Carolyn to be home.
Especially if the dog was like in the back. Maybe he thought, oh, these people are gone. Maybe there's nobody home.
I believe that she saw Keith coming in through the back door. Keith already had his gun out. He may have been doing, obviously, meth and maybe some coke or crack. I believe that she screams. John comes out of the bathroom, encounters Keith. He was just out of his mind. I don't think that he went in there with the intent to murder anyone. I think he went in there with the intent to rob. And all of a sudden, he'd just been confronted by 2 people, and it's a fight or flight, and he decided to kill them both.
I think my biggest takeaway from this case was not to prejudge what you may see at a scene. This case would suggest that maybe there was emotion here that had evolved to a certain level where people got angry and perpetrated violence. And really what it says to me is sometimes, by sheer happenstance or drug use, it can culminate in explosive violence in a way that seems personal when really it's just disorganized, frantic, unexplainable behavior.
Keith is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. He's convicted and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
The timeline was incredibly important because you had this 35, 40-minute window where this crime occurred. And putting together this timeline made it absolutely clear when we caught the guy who it was.
As the father, John Tarwaki, said, there is no closure, and I also believe there is no closure. You may get a conviction, but it's not going to bring your kid back. It's not going to change anything. Every time Christmas comes around, every time a birthday comes around, they're not going to be there.
But what sticks with me most about this case is just how senseless it was. These were 2 normal people getting ready for work, and somebody made up their mind that they wanted something and was going to do whatever they could to get it. It's senseless. It made no sense. And it still doesn't, even after all this time. I don't know how you recover from that.